How many has it made?
We've earned 4 Bitcoins.
What happened?
It's got double the power now, but it's using double the electricity.
What's wrong?
The electricity bill! This is madness!
It has to be a mistake, don't worry. I'll make you the cake, you will feel better.
Boy,
What?
did you see the electricity bill? It is over $6,000. This is astronomical! What is all this? Why are all these fans on?
It's cooling down my Bitcoin mining rig.
Bitcoin? What is Bitcoin?
It's an online currency. It's the way of the future.
Really? Where? Show me the Bitcoin.
I can't, it's digital.
You cannot even show me one Bitcoin?
It doesn't work like that.
You are useless. You do not know what you are doing. This is a scam. Switch it off.
No!
Here.
No, Dad! No! No!
Here.
No, please, Dad!
You idiot! Fucking take this out of my house!
Okay!
Cryptocurrency Bitcoin has risen to an all-time high as hundreds of investors all over the world have become instant millionaires. Bitcoin truly is a force to be reckoned with.
This is extremely interesting.
What is Bitcoin? All I hear is Bitcoin.
Bitcoin is a digital currency. It is the way of the future. Hey, Theo, you are home!
Yeah.
Where are you going? Stay with us.
Nah, I'm going into my room.
Hey, Theo! You know, Bitcoin is extremely valuable now, boy. It is going to become the gold of the future. Why couldn't you be like all these smart boys on the TV and do something with the Bitcoin? They're all millionaires while you are sleeping all day long. It is my birthday!
I'm gonna kill you!
Welcome, Bitcoin friends. It's Bitcoin Mamo. Today we're going to look at the Bitcoin charts, do some TA. We'll look at various time frames, and we'll also take a look at market cipher. So just starting off with the bigger picture here, we have been comparing this previous cycle, 2014 to 2017, with our current cycle. And we noticed that when we did the fib retracements from the tops of these dead cat bounces and also the all-time high, we got these golden pocket areas. It was based on the regular and the log scale to find these golden pockets, but we noticed that they were key levels of resistance on the way up to the all-time high, and would spend quite a long time consolidating below these levels. In this case here, this was about 6 months. This was also around 6 months here. But when we applied the same thing to our current cycle, we also noticed those golden pocket areas did line up with the key resistance levels. And we have been getting resistance from this next golden pocket area here for about 5 months now. And I think we're forming this ascending triangle pattern like we did in this previous cycle. And for it to be the same amount of time, we would have maybe 1 more month left here. And when we put both cycles side by side here, we did notice a lot of similarities. We did line up the peak here from that cycle we're comparing to with our first peak in our most recent cycle, not the second peak. And we noticed lots of similarities when we did that. I have also lined up the peak of these dead cat bounces here with the dead cat bounces on our most recent cycle. And one of the similarities we noticed here is we have the 50-week moving average in yellow, the 21-week exponential moving average in orange. We saw they crossed here, similar down here. We had that cross, and they crossed back here, and similar with the other cycle down here. So we see they do line up in a similar way. And the other thing we can point out, taking it from this first peak here to our current candle, it's 847 days. And doing the same thing with that previous cycle, 847 days. That puts us right here on this candle. And it looks like we're in a very similar spot. Again, we've been doing this ascending triangle pattern, similar to the previous cycle. And the number of days does actually line up when we use this first peak. So these aren't stretched. These are basically the same number of days on both of these charts. So there are lots of similarities. And if we just zoom in now on these ascending triangle patterns, we can see in that previous cycle, we spent 203 days forming this pattern. So again, a little over 6 months. And if we apply that number of days to our current formation here, that would put the end of this consolidation around the 2nd of October, where we may possibly see the breakout above this resistance level like we did in that previous cycle. And we also noticed that 21-week EMA in orange here acted as support on these pullbacks as we formed this ascending triangle pattern. And we also got support here on this pullback of that same moving average. And I think a similar thing will happen. This moving average is going to keep moving up over time here. Eventually we'll see that breakout to the upside, possibly in September or even the first week of October. Let's go down to the 2-week time frame for Bitcoin now. I've drawn in that ascending triangle pattern. And I've just done it like this to connect the low here after that pullback. So we do connect both of these lines. And we do see we have 3 touch points on this overall trend line connecting the lows. With our current 2-week candle, we haven't quite come to that trend line, which was at about 27,860. We do open a new 2-week candle at the start of next week, and this trend line would then be sitting at 28,580. And I am seeing some bullish signs in market cipher, or at least a possibility of us turning around here over time. And I think probably we go sideways for a few more weeks here. Perhaps we touch this trend line. And then later, as we start to approach September, perhaps we see a pushback to the upside. Going down to the weekly time frame now. On that 2-week chart, all of these lows did line up quite well. On the weekly, when we line up these 2 lows, we do see a bit of a gap with this pullback. So I have just drawn in a dotted trend line connecting the overall lows and one just connecting these lows. And that's what I've used to form this ascending triangle pattern. We do also have the 21-week EMA here in green. We can see currently it's sitting at about 28K. And we also have the 200-week moving average. That's currently sitting at about 27.4K. And if we look at next week's candle here on the weekly chart, at the bottom of that trend line would be at about 28K. Would also be in line. We do have a thin order block in blue there. And initially I was looking at these targets further down at 27.2K, 27.3K, because we did have the golden pocket, taking it from this low to the high, and also the 382 fib from this low to the high. So there was confluence here. I thought this may be a target we reach if we kept going down here. However, if we keep going sideways, then I think I would move that target up to 28K on a pullback. And again, on next week's candle, that would be in line with the trend line connecting these 2 lows. And looking at the RSI, we did draw in this white box here from a 50 to a 55 level. And we noticed in previous bull runs, this is the 2016-17 bull run. This is that triangle we're comparing to. We noticed once we got above this key RSI level on pullbacks, it acted as support. This coincided with pulling back to the 21-week EMA, this green line, and we saw that several times. We pulled back here to both the moving average and this zone on the RSI, also here. And we can wick below that moving average, but generally we close the bodies of the candles above. And we saw that all the way up in the bull run. And the opposite true in the bear market. This area acts as resistance, as does the 21-week EMA. But looking at our current price action here, we can see after breaking above this area on the RSI, we pulled back to it twice here, acted as support, as did the 21-week EMA. Also on this occasion, we pulled back to that zone, and the 21-week EMA also acted as support on both of these. And we see we got quite close to this zone on the RSI. We haven't quite come into it yet, and we haven't quite come back to that 21-week EMA. We don't have to come back into it, but if we do, I believe it will act as support. We won't close a weekly candle below 28K as the EMA is currently, and we won't go below this zone on the RSI. We can also look at the VPVR, the amount of volume traded at certain price levels over this range between 25 and 32K approximately. And we do see a decent spike here at 28K. In line with that weekly order block and the trend line where it would be at the start of next week's candle. We had support further down, but as time goes on here, I'm thinking maybe 28K would be the lowest on a pullback. We also see spikes here, and this is basically the zone we've been in for the last several weeks. We do have 2 weekly order blocks up here. One we currently broke down below. We wicked up to the higher order block here, and currently we are below this order block on the weekly time frame. and we see this order block goes from 29,450 to 29,900. So we'll have to see if we can close the weekly candle at least inside this order block. Again, that'd be above 29,450. The higher order block goes all the way up to 30.3k. And ideally, for us to try to make a push and break this ascending triangle pattern, we need to at least close weekly candles above 30.3k, which we have been below for the last 5 successive weeks here. And going down to the daily time frame now, again, we have that trend line connecting the overall lows, the dotted trend line, and the one connecting these two lows, and that same ascending triangle pattern. And we've also drawn in the 50-day moving average in yellow here. We notice we broke below it, and then we tried to get back above it. It failed twice here, quite similar to this previous correction. Initially acted as support. Once we broke below it, we attempted to push higher, got rejected from it like we did here, and then we did push down and make a couple of more lows here, coming back to that trend line. I think we might do a similar thing here, and then we could possibly form this falling wedge pattern here now that we have put in this local high, where we would have 2 touches on the top, only 1 on the bottom, as we look at alternating touches. So this second touch doesn't count as we didn't come back to the upper trend line. So we would be looking for 1 more touch on the bottom of this falling wedge. Again, it could be around that 28k area sometime next week. But if we did come down here for that second touch, then see a bounce, generally this is a bullish pattern, and we could look for a break of this trend line to confirm the next push to the upside. We can draw a trend line on the RSI connecting both of these lows, lining up with these lows and this trend line. And we do see we haven't quite come back to that trend line yet. So we could look for touching this trend line and also this overall trend line connecting these 2 lows. And then look for a bounce in that area. Looking at daily order blocks now, there are quite a few. So that's why I do have it on this separate chart. But we can see when the blue color is a lot brighter, it means there's several order blocks overlapping with each other. And we can see this key area here where lots of overlapping order blocks did act as support here in this range. Once we broke below it, now it's acting as resistance with all these wicks. We haven't even been able to close a daily candle inside any of these order blocks. And this order block lower down has been acting as support on the pullbacks. So if we do close a daily candle below this order block, which would be below 28,860, then I would expect us to come to these lower down order blocks. And we do see one thin layer here where these 2 order blocks overlap. And this is exactly at 28k, the area we spoke about. So that is another point of confluence at 28k. And we could come down to this trend line that we've been looking at, connecting these 2 lows and the overlapping order blocks at 28k. And again, this would line up around Tuesday of next week. But let's see how it does play out. We don't have to meet the trend line here. We could go sideways and meet it later on. We just have to let this one play out. Now, one thing we have been watching is the hash ribbon signal. This indicates when there is a minor capitulation, so miners are selling, and on the other side, it eventually gives us a buy signal, and these are quite reliable. Once we get the buy signal, we can look back at the previous low. Generally, that'll be the low, and we won't go below it. On this occasion, we had the FTX collapse. We did go below it. If that didn't happen, I think this would have been the low. But 90% of the time, these buy signals signify that the previous low is not going to be broken. And we saw that with this buy signal. This was our low at 15.5 approximately. And then we haven't gone back to that level. But we are seeing the hash ribbon signal starting to flash here, showing a minor capitulation. And we were looking for a buy signal. We have crossed back into the red here. So we're getting these circles again, indicating minor capitulation. So this signal could take a bit longer to play out. Perhaps we do need to come back to that trend line. And again, this one could take a bit longer to play out. And the buy signal could flash well after the bottom is in. Like we saw here, we got the buy signal. We already had moved up to 20k and it indicated the low was at 15.5k. So we can look at market cipher as well to indicate where the bottom is on this pullback. But let's look at a market cipher now. We're going to start on the 12-hour time frame. This was our bear market low here. We've had these 3 moves to the upside. And what I'm noticing here is obviously we have this red dot on the 12-hour, will be confirmed at the end of the day. But comparing this correction here with our previous correction, I do notice some similarities. We can see we spent a long time here with this blue wave below the 0 line. And now we have had this push up and we're seeing this red dot. Similarly with this correction down here, we did spend a lot of time with the blue wave below that 0 line. We had that push to the upside and then we got this red dot here after this rally. We had one more push down to make that lower low before we had that next move to the upside. So I think we could be doing a similar thing here. We might be at this stage. We saw the rally to the upside and perhaps we're going to see a correction back down for one more low, perhaps at that 28K area we spoke about. And this correction does look similar to this one, but on a more smaller scale. And switching to the daily time frame, we did get that green dot confirmed on Wednesday. This blue wave has been moving up. It looks like it's starting to curve around. And again, if we compare it to this rally on the previous correction, we saw the blue wave come to the upside. We got a red dot just above the 0 line. We could possibly see a similar thing here. And then we had that correction. We knew the bottom of this correction was in when we got this major daily green dot. It was the only one over this correction. And this happens when we're below the white line here with the blue wave. So we could look for something similar. Perhaps we come up here, get that red dot. We get pushed back down. And then we look for that major daily green dot to indicate the bottom of the correction. And we can just add in those trend lines that we were watching, one connecting these two lows and the overall trend line connecting the overall lows here. And we're still on the daily time frame. So if we were to have that correction, we could come down to this trend line around 28K. And we're not ruling out coming back to that lower trend line. That would be down at 27K. But really we have to watch this play out and look for where that green dot starts appearing. But we can keep these trend lines on the market cipher chart and follow this as it does progress. Now the 2-day time frame did get a green dot on Tuesday and it got confirmed on Wednesday, which is today's current 2-day candle. And this was something we've been looking for. We said if we get a major daily green dot along with the 2-day green dot, that would confirm for me the bottom is in. We haven't seen that major daily green dot yet. It's just a regular green dot. So under that circumstance, I also needed to see the hash ribbon buy signal, but I think that'll take a lot longer. So we can see with this 2-day green dot, we also got one here, which was after this rally, which we've been comparing this one to. And so if we get that daily red dot, we might see the 2-day red dot, and then that one more push back down, possibly to this trend line, worst case, this trend line. And then we can look for that 2-day green dot after that. But the main thing is to look for that major daily green dot. And in conjunction, it would tell us that the bottom of this correction is in. The 3-day time frame, we see the blue wave starting to close off here. The next candle is on Friday. The 4 days also curving around with this blue wave. We don't have a green dot yet. The next candle is on Sunday. We can see how things are starting to turn around a bit with the 2-day, 3-day, 4-day sort of time frames where the blue wave is starting to curve and almost getting to that green dot stage. Again, this one is slower moving. We could have that move before Sunday back down, and this would look more like the blue wave still coming down. So the main thing we can watch for is that daily chart for that red dot. If it does get confirmed, then we start coming down. And then look for that major daily green dot on the other side. Same with the 5-day. The blue wave looks to be curving here. The next candle won't be till Monday though. And the 6-day looks unchanged here. The next candle will be tomorrow. And the weekly is pretty much unchanged here. Obviously this is slower moving. But the key takeaway here is the daily chart. Obviously we have the red dot on the 12-hour. Will be confirmed at the end of the day, which means we're close to getting a red dot on the daily time frame. And I think we are doing something similar to this rally during this correction. Again, we spend a lot of time here below the 0 line like we did here. And then we're looking for that red dot and then one more lower low coming back to this trend line, worst case, this trend line. But I think maybe 28K may be the bottom of the pullback. And again, we can watch this blue wave. Once we get a red dot confirmed on the daily, We can see how quickly the wave comes down. If eventually we do get that major daily green dot, that'll indicate that the bottom is in, like what happened here on the previous occasion. But that's the main things I'm watching for. I think that's about all for today. Hope you enjoyed that analysis on Bitcoin Mamo. I'll see you next time. Bye.